Hello hockey fans and welcome back to another video. For the last few weeks, I've dedicated my Sunday uploads to answering hockey related questions that you guys have sent me via Twitter or my community tab. Now I've really enjoyed how relaxed these videos have been and how I've been able to provide my own thoughts and opinions on a variety of topics in a more casual, less scripted setting. However, I feel like there's still something that's kind of missing from that format, you know? Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to a new segment I like to call This Week in Hockey, the show where we recap some of the biggest news from across the hockey world over the last 7 days. I mean, you guys were already asking me plenty of questions on recent events, so why not turn this into a weekly recap of the sport's biggest headlines, right? But anyway, let's get into the news, shall we? So first up, and probably the biggest headline we're going to talk about this week, was the reveal of NHL 23. And first off, more specifically, the reveal of the NHL 23 cover, which looks a little something like this. So as you can see, Anaheim Ducks forward Trevor Zegras and Team Canada women's forward Sarah Nurse are the two athletes that are featuring on this year's cover. Now it's important to mention that this is the first time in the franchise's history that a member of the Anaheim Ducks has been featured on an NHL video game cover, while it's also the first time that both a woman and a person of colour has also been added onto the cover. Oh, but Nurse doesn't play in the NHL Odd Man Rush. Why do they have to put her on the front of an NHL game? The NHL series has gone woke, guys. We're literally talking about the cover of an NHL hockey video game. Not the game itself, the cover. A poster on the front of the game box. It really isn't that deep, folks. Calm down, okay? Now, I personally have no objections with who they picked to put on the cover. However, the rest of the cover is where I have a few issues. I get that they're trying to market this game to as many people as possible, both hardcore hockey fans and casual sports fans as well, and I get that they're trying to use the cover athletes that they've selected to market and sell the game as opposed to the rest of the cover itself. However, palm trees and shorts doesn't exactly scream NHL hockey, does it? If you have no idea what the NHL is and you've never heard of hockey before, then if you look at this cover, you're probably not going to understand that this is a hockey video game based on it, are you? That said, I really don't care about this cover as much as a lot of people do. There's been so much uproar regarding the cover on social media recently. In the grand scheme of things, this cover doesn't really make much of a difference. It's nice, could have been better, could have been worse, pretty much like everything else in the NHL series. I'm sure plenty of other people that were planning to buy the game, they're going to buy it regardless of who's on the cover or what's on the cover, and those people that sit there and complain about the game all the time as well, they're not going to buy it, or they might buy it and still complain about it anyway, because that's the 2020s, right? And besides, most people buy the game digitally now anyway. They buy it on the Xbox store or the PlayStation store, so you rarely even see the cover anyway. So the cover doesn't really make much of a difference. It doesn't really matter who they put on it. They did release a Generation 4 cover as well for the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, which I'm not really sure that looks any better than what they've given us already. Well, at least they're actually in a hockey rink and they've got their gear on, so it does look more like an ice hockey game. Guys, it's a cover. Relax, okay? There's much bigger things to worry about in the NHL series than who they plaster on the posters, okay? And also with NHL 23, they released the reveal trailer to announce this year's title and when it's going to be released. I'm not going to go into every single little detail. I'm not an NHL video game YouTuber now. I play it every once in a while, but it's not my main shtick. Plenty of other hockey YouTubers and streamers that have covered it far better than I will, but I'll go through the main important notes. So they did show a first-person view during the reveal trailer. I think it was Trevor Zegras kind of going up the ice in a first-person perspective, which, if they're going to implement that into the game, if that's going to be a camera angle that you can use, especially in something like Be a Pro, for example, where it would really shine, that could be a really interesting concept to explore. However, I feel like it could be one of those gimmicks that EA Sports introduces into the series every game or so. I feel like it's going to be this very gimmick kind of playing style or camera perspective that either people will really love and they'll use it for every single game moving forwards, or they'll use it once or twice and never touch it again. And I feel like most people are going to be in that latter category, you know? The trailer also revealed that the Zegras goal is going to be introduced into the game, and it looks like it's becoming the latest trick play to be added to the series. The Michigan was added last game or the game before, so they're definitely going for these kind of trick plays, these skill plays. Everybody said that the Zegras play was very much like a video game style play when it was done in the real game, so why not put it into the video game as well, you know? However, I do think it's worth pointing out that these moves, both the Michigan and the Zegras, they're not new to the NHL video game series. They're not new to NHL video games or EA Sports NHL video games either, as you can go back to early to mid NHL games of the 2000s. If you look at NHL 05, NHL 06, some kind of timeline around there, those games featured the Michigan and the Zegras in those games. And those games were also made by EA Sports. Sure, they haven't been a feature for the last decade and a half or so it's been a while since they've been fully implemented into the game and kind of advertised as a feature. But if one of your biggest selling points for this game is the introduction of this brand new kind of feature, this brand new way to score goals, yeah, it's already been done 10, 15 years ago, and it's already been done by your company 10, 15 years ago, I feel like it's a little disingenuous to tout the Zegras as a new feature when you've already done it many times before previously. Then again, this is EA Sports we're talking about, so this isn't exactly their first rodeo when it comes to recycling content and displaying it as new features into the game, you know? It isn't the first time, and it certainly isn't going to be the last. However, the biggest news from the reveal trailer for NHL 23 was the introduction of cross-platform play for both EA SHL and Hockey Ultimate Team. Now, this is a feature that the NHL video game community has been begging for years now. There's been lots of issues where, regardless of what console you're playing on, it takes forever to get into a game, especially after the first month when the game's been released and a lot of the player base has kind of trailed off into other games as well. By the looks of it, EA Sports have finally listened to what their fans wanted, and they're finally implementing it into the game. So congratulations, NHL Games, congratulations, EA Sports. You've finally joined modern day gaming, you've finally figured this out, and you're finally giving the fans something that they want, so I will give you props for that. That said, it is worth pointing out that crossplay only works with the same generation of consoles as far as I'm aware, so PlayStation 4 and Xbox One players can play against each other on the previous gen, while PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S/X players can play together on the same generation. You can't cross-generation, so a PlayStation 4 player can't play against a PlayStation 5 player, and an Xbox Series S/X player can't play against an Xbox One player, and vice versa. And it's also worth mentioning that cross-platform play isn't going to be released until November, so don't expect cross-play to be ready and good to go on day one when the game is released in October, okay? Like, I get that this feature took a little bit longer to finish than the production team initially thought, and I get that they want to get it right first time and not release it in October and have to patch it a bunch of times to make it playable, but considering this is the main selling point for this year's video game, and this is the kind of main thing they want the audience and their fan base to get hyped about, taking several weeks after the game drops to finally release it is the most EA thing I've ever heard of, you know? Now, I'll be perfectly honest, folks, I'm not the biggest fan of the most recent NHL video games, and I have absolutely no intention of picking this game up at launch because of it, but I will be interested to see what the overall response is for this game from the NHL community and from fans out there, whether it be on social media or other content creators making videos on it, and maybe then if the response is relatively positive, I'll think about picking it up when it goes on sale several months later. I mean, I barely play any of the online modes as it is, I'm more of a single player kind of guy, so I don't think I'll be missing out on much if I buy it a few months later, will I? All in all, NHL 23, it's had a very mixed reception, both with its cover and its new features. It's nice to see cross-platform players being introduced, sucks that it takes a few extra weeks in order to be implemented, but I'm very curious to see how the game goes. What are your thoughts on NHL 23 and what we've heard and seen so far? Let me know in the comments below. The other piece of major news that was released over the last week was the announcement of the return of the World Cup of Hockey. Now, an article released on the NHL's website revealed that both the league itself and the NHL Players Association are moving forward with plans to bring back the World Cup of Hockey in less than 2 years' time in 2024, where they are targeting a 17-day window during the month of February in order to hold the tournament. So it's going to be very similar to the Olympic-style break that they had during the recent 21-22 season, or an extended All-Star break that typically happens during the month of February. Now, the tournament was last played in 2016 at Toronto's Air Canada Centre, where Team Canada won the World Cup on home ice, and the 2024 World Cup would become just the 4th competition in the event's history, since there were also tournaments held in 1996 and 2004. Regarding the tournament, NHL Deputy Director Bill Daly said that, quote, "We're still on schedule and continuing to have regular meetings for a February 2024 World Cup, so it sounds like the league are quite keen to host another international tournament featuring NHL athletes and NHL players." Obviously, the relationship between the NHL and the Olympics and the IIHF has been a bit on and off over the last decade or so. They obviously didn't go to the Olympics recently, which was a real shame, but I think the fact that the NHL are wanting to host another international tournament is a really positive sign. And not only that, Daly also said that there have been some discussions surrounding adding 2 extra teams to the tournament to round out the number of nations there to 10, and he would also like to see one of the preliminary rounds of the competition take place in Europe, while the other takes place in North America, and then the semi-final rounds onwards to take place in a different city in North America. It's really great to see that the NHL want to host part of the tournament in Europe and expose both the World Cup of Hockey and their NHL athletes to more fans across the pond, especially since the recent pandemic cut a lot of their international plans short and meant that they couldn't host a lot of the events that they really wanted to. Obviously, the NHL has done the Global Series for several years, but the Global Series this year is the first event that's being held of that type since 2019. It's been 3 years since we had any NHL games hosted internationally, and they do wonders for the European fan base and both letting European fans see the best hockey players in the world and exposing new potential fans to the sport and getting them interested, then following their local teams, following the NHL and really becoming interested in the sport. So the fact that both the NHL and the IIHF sound like they want to host part of the tournament in Europe and expose the tournament and their players to the European fan base and a wider fan base, not just in North America, the diehard fans there, I think is a really good idea. The more fans we can get both in North America and in Europe and elsewhere around the world makes the sport a better place. So now I've got to be honest, folks, I'm actually really excited to see the World Cup of Hockey return. I mean, it's been so long since NHL athletes last competed at the Olympic Games, and it's been over 6 years now since the last World Cup tournament took place. It really is time to get these NHL players back on the international stage and have the best of the best go head to head in order to determine which hockey nation is the superior one of the lot, especially since we were robbed of this exact situation earlier this year when NHL players didn't end up going to the Olympics. Now sure, there's still 18 months until the tournament is set to take place, and there's a lot that can happen between now and then, both good and bad, but here's hoping that the NHL, the NHLPA and the International Ice Hockey Federation can get everything finalised sooner rather than later, the tournament can go ahead without any major issues or another pandemic hitting, and we can finally see NHL athletes return to the international stage, and we finally get to see some of the best go head to head. So get it done, people. Your fans are counting on you. We've been missing this for a long time. Give us what we need, okay? Now to finish off this video, let's go back to basics and answer some of your viewer questions, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right guys? First up, we have a question from @yourboyzoo on Twitter, who asks, do you think the Flames got worse or better after this offseason? Now I think it's fair to say that Calgary had one of, if not the most turbulent offseason of any NHL team this year. Losing Johnny Gaudreau via free agency, losing Matthew Tkachuk from him basically saying he doesn't want to remain with the team long term and having to trade him. They lost several key players during that run, and that's not even mentioning depth pieces like Eric Branson and Calle Jarnkrok. However, I think with the moves that Brad Treliving made during this offseason in order to kind of offset the losses that he had, he actually ended up potentially improving the roster. Gaining Nazem Kadri via free agency was a huge get for them. Obviously, the contract is a little bit too much, but that's what you have to pay for a free agent of his caliber. But also acquiring Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar as part of the Matthew Tkachuk trade from Florida was a huge get for the Flames as well. And not only that, there were some questions about can Calgary retain their top players. They go and re-sign Huberdeau to a massive extension, maybe a little bit more than most fans would have been wanting, and maybe they had to pay a bit of a premium in order to keep him around, but still, they managed to acquire a solid asset and extend him for the next 7 or 8 years or so. With the hand that Brad Treliving was dealt, he looked like he could have had a really awful offseason. I think with the moves that he's made, he's showing the organisation and the team, I want to win the Stanley Cup now. We have the pieces, we lost some very key pieces, but we've automatically replaced them with the moves that we've made. We need to compete for the Stanley Cup now. Our window is wide open right now. You need to go and get the job done now, Flames, okay? Have the Calgary Flames gotten better this offseason? I'm not entirely sure, because losing a pair in Gaudreau and Tkachuk are huge losses to that roster. But have they gotten worse? I don't think so. I think at the very worst, the Calgary Flames are just as good as they were last season, which isn't a very bad position to be in, considering they made it all the way through to the second round of the postseason. Like I said in my video I made about the Calgary Flames off-season overhaul, they've still got a very strong supporting cast. They've now added several star players to that mix, and a very promising defenseman in Mackenzie Weegar. I think they can get the job done. I would be genuinely surprised if they didn't make it back to the second round of the playoffs again next year. Could they compete for the conference finals or the Stanley Cup finals? Maybe. I guess the pucks just need to bounce their way. Once they make it to that part, time will tell, you know, it can go either way. But I'm really impressed with the offseason that the Calgary Flames have produced here. It could have gone far, far worse for Brad Treliving and the Flames. They could have ended up whiffing on every single thing that happened. Well done, Brad Treliving. You had a pretty rough go to start off with, but you really managed to come back in the second half and get the job done. So I'm interested to see how you do next year, guys. Get it done. And lastly, we have a question from @ColAvFan33 on Twitter who asks, do you think there is enough of a demand in the UK for the NHL to do something similar to what the NFL and MLB does and host a game there? Now, the NHL has already hosted a game in the UK. I believe it was back in September of 2008, if I'm not mistaken, where the Anaheim Ducks and the LA Kings played a preseason game, and from what I'm aware of, that was a resounding success for UK hockey fans. I think it could be a really successful venture for the NHL to try. Yes, ice hockey isn't the biggest thing in the UK right now, and it's kind of slowly building momentum, but it does have a very dedicated hardcore fan base, and if the NHL were to announce we're hosting another game in the UK, come and watch us, the tickets would be sold out in a matter of moments, I believe, especially if it's a one-off game in a big arena where there's, 7,000, 10,000 fans or so. Fans from all over the country would be travelling to see that game. I know I would. I'd definitely go straight there, go watch that game. I don't care which teams are playing. Tell me there's an NHL game being held in the UK. We have the facilities in order to host an NHL game. We've hosted Olympic qualifiers, World Championship qualifiers, World Championship friendly games, Continental Cups, etc., etc. So you could do a friendly game against one of the local teams as well. Say, I don't know, the Minnesota Wild plays against the Sheffield Steelers or the Nottingham Panthers or the Manchester Storm or the Cardiff Devils. That could be a really cool event to take place. I do think it would be a profitable venture for them, and I think it would help expose more UK hockey fans and more of the English and UK population to the sport of hockey. They see the best players coming over here to play a game here. They're going to get more interested in the sport. They're then going to go and follow the Elite League. They're going to then go and follow the NIHL. They're going to follow the NHL, and hopefully it will bring in more fans. Essentially, they want to expose the sport to areas where it's not the most exposed and show people the fun and the interest and the kind of craziness that is the sport of hockey. The UK would be the perfect place to do that. It's a growing fan base, but it's still got a long ways to go before it becomes one of the pinnacles of UK sport. So bring a couple of NHL teams over here. We've seen how successful the NFL and the MLB are. These games that they host over here, they grow the fan base exponentially. So the NHL should be thinking, we've got to jump on that bandwagon as well, host a game over there. We will get a bunch more fans in, and it will also help the domestic leagues as well. So NHL, host another game in the UK. I really want it. Please? And on that note, I'm going to end today's video. Those were some of the biggest headlines this week in hockey. What do you guys think about the topics that we covered or the opinions that I expressed? Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree with what I said? Or do you agree with some things and disagree with others so we can meet somewhere in the middle? Also, what do you guys think about this style of video? Is this format something that you'd be interested to see more of once the 22-23 season finally gets underway? Let me know in the comments below. I do really want to hear what you guys have to say on this. But thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Bexy93, Burned Retinas, Clayton Hallam, Drew Fawcett, Houston NG, Raquel, and Worthless Pieces for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.